Hey, everybody, Max Boltman here alongside Mark Lazarus for another episode of the Athletic Hockey Show. We are in the final week of the NHL season, and some questions are getting answered, some still resolved. The Atlantic race, the East wild card race, those are settled, but we still got a lot to get to in the Metro. The Metro teams are battling for the final spot there. The Islanders, I believe, are eliminated now after losing on Sunday. Columbus is behind the eight ball. They lost to Boston. This might very well come down to Philly and Washington. So we're going to have Kevin Kurz join us a little bit later to talk Flyers. And right now from DC, let's bring in Sean Gentille. He's been around the Capitals all week. Sean, we are going to get to the playoff race with the Capitals, but we got to start with the story that everyone wants to know about in
Wait,
Washington.
no. I've been told over the last 5 days that the only thing that matters around the Washington Capitals is the playoff race. There's nothing else going on. Yes.
There's a little something else that we got to get to. It's Alex Ovechkin. I'm sure you were like me watching this one, looking for hints as to, is this his final home game with the Capitals? There were hints in each direction, I would say maybe, or maybe more so in one direction, but you never know who's nudging what. Dylan Strome gets himself tossed from the opening faceoff so that Ovechkin and Crosby can have the faceoff, but kind of looked like Strome's having to shove Ovi into that moment a little bit too. And when the Penguins are standing there waiting to shake his hand, another thing that I took as like, oh, they think this. Ovi waves him off. No, what are you doing? Get off the ice. I'm not doing this right now. You've been around him all week. What do you make of this?
What do I make of this? I think this is what we're seeing here. I think he sincerely hasn't made up his mind yet. I don't think he's got his decision made and has it sitting in a drawer somewhere. I don't think that's what's going on. I think there is some degree of uncertainty there, but I think every single sign points to this being it. Like that there's no other way around it. Like I don't think we would have seen what we saw at Capital One Arena today if there were a 50-50 chance that he were coming back. Like that felt like a funeral. That felt like a wake, kind of. It wasn't a funeral. It was more upbeat than that. But I think the fact that we saw that go down the way that it did tells us a whole lot. Ovechkin, we saw it last year. It points throughout the Gretzky chase. He's not an overly self-reflective person. I think he's see ball, hit ball when it comes to a lot of stuff. I don't think he has much time for overthinking things. And I think what we're seeing right now is that play out in a very real way. I think it's as simple as this for him. He hasn't made a decision, so he's not going to act as if he has. And I think that is sort of the skeleton key for what we've dealt with over the last 5 days, which has been constant questions in different cities of people trying to get him to say like, yeah, this is probably it. And it means a lot to me for reasons A, B, and C. And he's not going to do it because A, I don't think he's wired that way. And B, the Capitals, as you said at the top of the show, Maxie, they have a very real chance to make the playoffs. So the fact that they're still in the mix gives him plausible deniability and a whole bunch of coverage to approach this in whatever way he wishes.
It sure seems that everyone else thinks this is it for him. The way that Crosby and Malkin, they sat the home game to play the road game doing their down the stretch load management out of respect to Ovechkin. That was as big a sign as any. And you've got like the Crosby trying to set up the handshake line, like Max said. In post game with his interview with our friend Tarek El Bashir, he said it's been tremendous. He's using the past tense there. It feels like even he thinks it's the end. But yeah, I think you've nailed it. He just doesn't want to commit just in case he changes his mind.
Well, we've seen it in other sports in very recent history. We saw it happen with Tom Brady. He thought he was done and then decided that he wasn't, and he paid a price for it, and it's personally, and I think reputationally. I think we can look to that and see the hazards of committing to something like this when you're not 100% certain. So I think that's at play here. And I think another thing that's in play is that the fans, obviously in Washington, certainly particularly in Washington, they wanted this moment and they deserve this moment to be able to chant his name and go crazy in the full context of the event, knowing that this is potentially the last time, they deserve to say goodbye to him while he's wearing a uniform and skates and playing in a hockey game that matters. Not in July at a ceremony, not next season. They want it to happen now, and to some degree they deserve that. And I think that's why this has played out in the way that it has. This is how we treat legends when they retire. This is
Yeah.
how it's supposed to work under the best of circumstances. And I know it doesn't. Lucky are the ones who actually get to have it play out that way, and that's why it's been strange, because this is Alex Ovechkin. If he leaves, he is going to leave on his own terms. But he's also, which we've seen so infrequently, even from players of his caliber, right? But he's also he's not willing to put 10 toes down on it, which is understandable to an extent, but it's made for a weird vibe over the last week.
Do you if he said, you know what, I'm coming back one last season, he gets the Derek Jeter victory tour treatment, the Marc-Andre Fleury, Andre Kopitar to a lesser degree this year, where everywhere he goes, there's a ceremony, he's getting gifts from other teams. Does that strike you as something that he would enjoy? Does he want to avoid that?
No.
Does he not like the pomp and circumstance?
I think he got his fill of it last year. Dylan Strome told me as much a couple of days ago in Toronto. He says, it was a very fun. Mark, you know Strome.
I miss Dylan Strome deeply. Yes.
I miss Dylan Strome, and I didn't cover a team that had Dylan Strome on it for a full year, right? He said, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think last year was tough for him. I think last year, because of the pomp and the circumstance and all that surrounding the chase, I think he got his fill. Basically, that's not a direct quote from Dylan Strome, but it's close enough. Like, he's like, I don't know if he wants to do this again. So I think that's absolutely at play here. But I also don't think that's the driving factor. I don't think he's approaching this in a dishonest way. I think he's just not 100% sure yet. So he's not going to act like he is.
From a practical standpoint, there's really not much for Alex Ovechkin to chase at this point. There's always more wins to be had. You can talk yourself into, with the right moves, could they get a little better? But I don't think there's really a path for us talking about the Capitals as a top 5 or 6 team next year necessarily. He's not going to get to 1,000 goals. That would require like a 70-goal season. It's just kind of one more year for one more year's sake. And I got to imagine that's a factor in all this. At the same time, like, whenever he walks away from the Capitals, Sean, like, he's not the greatest player in NHL history. He's certainly in like the top 10, but I don't think there's any player in NHL history who has meant more to their franchise singularly. Well, but they got Sid too, right? I mean, like, the Penguins they had Ron Francis, they had Yager, right? Like, the Red Wings had Yzerman and Howe. Like, no one. Ovechkin is truly singular, complete league of his own for the Capitals.
The thing about the Capitals is they have structured their entire business around Alex Ovechkin for like a decade now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they avoided rebuilds because all that mattered was the chase for the goal record for years. That was the company's number one priority. And I'm fascinated to see what they might do if they finally have an opportunity to go in a new direction here.
Here's what I'll say about where he ranks in that discussion. I do think Lemieux is number one there. Is that hometown bias coming from me? Maybe partially. He kept the Penguins from moving 3 separate times.
Sure.
So I think that, and I think you could argue credibly that there's not an athlete in the history of North American sports who matters more to one franchise than Mario Lemieux does to the Pittsburgh Penguins. The fact that Alex Ovechkin is maybe number 2 is a tremendous testament to the importance of Alex Ovechkin. So I don't draw the Lemieux comparison lightly, and I don't mean to belittle what he means to that franchise, because if he's not 1, he's 2, right? I completely agree with you there. What they've said from the start is that it's his decision to make. So if he wants to come back next year, guess who's playing left wing on the first line with Dylan Strome and hanging out on the left circle on the power play? It's Alex Ovechkin. They are going to do as he wants them to do. And I think that in and of itself is testimony to the importance that he has with that organization, and it's a testament to the cred that he's built up, and also the player to some degree that he still is. I mean, he's a wild watch these days because he's not moving there all that much, but also he's going to score 35 goals. So I don't know. Like how do you reconcile that? That
He's
it's a
44
singular
goals
player.
last year, 33
Mhm.
goals this year. He's still a positive possession player. He is a black hole defensively, but he's still so good offensively that
I
he's got that shot. He can outperform every metric still.
and
He's still good.
he's got the benefit of having a coach who respects him and understands his flaws and is willing to mitigate them in a way that also still shows a very real degree of deference to to his accomplishments in Spencer Carberry. Like I think that is, you know, in Jack Adams last year deserved, right? We're Spencer Carberry, his reputation is certainly intact. I'm not going to sit here and gas him up all that much, but I think the fact that he has found a way to maximize what Ovechkin has left in the tank while also hiding, some very obvious deficiencies in his game as a soon to be 41-year-old man. I that is eh, don't underestimate the importance of Spencer Carberry to this entire operation, to the way things have gone for Alex Ovechkin for the last 3 years. Because I don't know that there are a ton of coaches that would have the patience or the juice or the I think to some degree, frankly, like emotional intelligence it takes to manage what he's had to manage over the last little bit.
If it's not a Washington Capital next year, is he playing hockey in the KHL? I mean, I know that I'm asking you to kind of crystal ball a little bit here, but I think that's always kind of lurked in the background here. Is that it happened with Pavel Datsyuk? He retires from the NHL, but he played multiple years in Russia. I mean, I'm of the impression that that's kind of on the radar here.
Absolutely. I mean, he's said as much. Like he's at multiple points throughout his career, and we're not talking 10 years ago or 5 years ago. We're talking in November on the podcast that Jeff Merrick and Bruce Boudreau do together,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Like he has said that it is his intention whenever his North American career is over to play some amount of games with Dynamo, right? Like we don't know if that's one game, two game, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, like it's going to be some amount of time. I think that's the variable, but the idea of him, wearing that uniform at some point is I would say it's almost a fait accompli at this point.
It's not hard to imagine him doing the Yager route and just like owning a team and playing in 5 games a year to get sellouts and just scoring one-timers from every now and then and just being a part of it
For
and not being
sure.
a day-to-day aspect. Yeah.
And I think that's also, you mentioned Yager. I think there's some parallels there too with what Pittsburgh has had to deal with. As far as Yager's retirement was concerned, yes, like the overall shape of their careers were completely different, but the way Yager's post NHL retirement plan kind of fanned out, he kept Pittsburgh waiting for a certain amount of time to honor him, and I think there is also probably some degree of concern, and I would say that it's short term rather than long term, but I think that's why we saw what we saw today. I think there is kind of a need to honor him while he's here, honor him while he's still in uniform, because we do know that when he's back in Moscow, he's going to be there on a permanent basis, right? And once you're over there, we've seen it with Yager, we've seen it from plenty of other great players. Like it's a little bit tough to get him back.
All right, well then let's do what Alex Ovechkin would have us do right now and talk about the Capitals' playoff race instead of his future right now because it's real. It's still a little tepid. I mean, the Flyers have the inside track here. The Capitals and the Blue Jackets are going to play what amounts to an elimination game.
Mm-hmm.
And it does not mean that winner gets in, but the loser is eliminated. The Capitals would need to win that game and have Philly lose twice, which is tall odds, but it's not impossible.
Carolina and Montreal, they got 2 legitimate opponents.
And Carolina's plan to lock up the 1 seed, and Montreal, depending on what happens with Buffalo, could be playing with the division still in play, with home ice still in play. Those are 2 losable games here. The Capitals are on a little bit of a push lately. Like, do you see them finding a way to get in?
If they beat Columbus on Tuesday, they have 1 point to play with. Like that's a major factor here is you're not asking Philadelphia to lose twice in regulation. They can have an overtime loss or a shootout loss mixed in there because of the tiebreaker. Yep. So I think that fact, and I haven't looked at the updated playoff odds. I'm sure those will be up on the Athletic from Dallas Chisholm by the time this pod posts. I don't know what their playoff odds are, but the fact that they own the tiebreaker with Philly is a huge deal because Philly does have that the schedule's tougher in Columbus. It looks like a much more winnable game for Washington now than it did 10 days ago.
It's really incredible how this East race has kind of come back down to earth. I mean, the Capitals lost, what was it, 8-1 to the Rangers and 7-2 to the Devils earlier this month. And in March, nobody could lose, and now nobody can win. And it's the Flyers are the only team that's really playing well down this stretch. I mean, yeah, the Capitals just swept a home from Pittsburgh. That was a Pittsburgh team that had nothing to play for. It's kind of amazing how they've gotten back into it.
It was Pittsburgh and Wilkes-Barre, I think.
Right,
It was
the baby
Wilkes-Barre
Penguins,
yesterday
yeah.
and Pittsburgh today. Yeah. Man, Laz, you mentioned the Rangers loss. That felt disqualifying in the moment for Washington. And look, if they don't make the playoffs, it's going to be because they didn't get 2 points out of the New York Rangers. Because if they miss, they're going to miss by 1, or they're going to miss by 2 with a tiebreaker, right? Like in all likelihood. So, that felt seismic at the time as it related to the Eastern Conference playoff race, and I think it's still bearing out that way, even though this has dragged on a little bit longer than people anticipated and kind of taken a different shape than maybe we would have thought a few days ago.
Yep. All right, that is Sean Gentille. Sean, thanks for doing this. I know you've had a busy week. We're going to take a quick break right there. We'll come back with Kevin Kurz to talk about the other team that we just alluded to, the Philadelphia Flyers. All right, we are back, and we are going to bring in now from Philadelphia, Kevin Kurz, who is covering the Flyers. We talked about the Capitals side of this playoff race with Sean in segment 1. Philly's the pole position holder, though, and they've been red hot, really not just for like a couple weeks here now, but it is 16-6-1 in their last 23, Kevin. What's gone right for the Flyers lately?
Well, to me, it starts with the defensive play and in goal. And obviously, goaltender's been in focus here for a little while. The Flyers had the worst goaltending in the league last year. And Dan Vladar has just been a complete home run in net. He's been steady really since day one. He's been consistent. He rebounds from bad games, which we just saw him do again the other day in that win in Winnipeg, coming off of getting pulled in Detroit 2 days earlier. And defensively, it's been a weird season because when Rick Tocchet first got here, that was the part of the game that this team picked up pretty much right away. And obviously Tocchet is known for his defensive style and being a very, very strong defensive coach. And that was why, if you go back and look at the standings, the Flyers were hanging in it around Christmas time until early January. And then it just fell off a cliff. I mean, they nosedived in January. They were giving up high danger chances left and right. The goaltending wasn't bailing them out, but you didn't really blame the goaltenders for that. And then coming out of the break, maybe they just were fatigued. Coming out of the break, they found that defensive style, and a lot of the offensive things that I think Tocchet changed a little bit too. He tried to simplify things a little bit, so there's a little less decision making, both offensively and defensively, and the team has responded to it. Travis Sanheim has been a rock back there. He's come back from the Olympic break, not fatigued at all. He even said he's playing his best hockey of the season. Jamie Drysdale's improved defensively. Cam York doesn't do much offensively, but he's been a good partner for Drysdale. Rasmus Ristolainen, whose name was all over trade boards leading up to the deadline. He was a guy that Danny Briere had a high price for. No team met that. He's been paired with Travis Sanheim on that top pair. He's been playing really well. So to me, that's where it starts. They've refound that defensive identity they had early in the season, and some other guys are scoring more often. And obviously it helps a little bit. I'm sure you guys want to talk about this. When you get Tyson Foerster back, when you get a rookie like Porter Martone in the lineup, added to an improving Matvei Michkov, you're going to score more goals.
Well, let's hold off on Martone there, because you mentioned Foerster, and you look at the arc of the Flyers season. Early January, they're in a playoff spot. Mm-hmm. And then it all kind of comes undone. And it's not 1-for-1. And now obviously they're surging back with Foerster. It's not 1-for-1 when all these runs happen, but it's kind of mapped a little bit to Forster's availability for them. And in Forster's health is they were there, and then they were without him, and they were, in a huge lull. He's back. I know that the run back started before he came back. And like I said, it doesn't overlap perfectly, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I've always thought Flyers fans, even Flyers fans locally, underrate him a little bit. But now we're on two coaches. Both John Tortorella and Rick Tocchet have used the words Mark Stone when describing Tyson Foerster's game as, he's big, he's got the long stick, he's great along the wall, he's got a great shot. I mean, there are a lot of similarities between the two of them. Obviously, Mark Stone is the more, he's the bigger name now, and Tyson Foerster still has some growing to do, but at the time Foerster was hurt, which was December 1st, everything pointed towards him taking a huge step forward this year. He was leading the team in goals. He had 10 of them at the time, which is a 40-goal pace. Defensively, he was outstanding. He was killing penalties. I mean, if you look at Dom's analytics, he had Foerster in the conversation for a Selke because of how proficient he was defensively. So he's just one of those guys that every coach loves, and every coach misses him when he's not in the lineup. And from the Flyers' perspective, there are two things that he brings that they lack when he's not in the lineup: size, because he's a big guy. This, especially the time he got hurt, this was a smaller lineup, so they missed that right away. And a shooting mentality. This team, there were too many guys throughout the course of the year when Foerster wasn't here, passing up shots or just not getting to those dangerous areas. That's never been a problem for Foerster. He can get to the dangerous areas, and he can rip it probably as well as anybody, if not better than anyone on this roster.
So I usually get wrapped up in these teams that make a run at the end of the season to get into the playoffs. They're in playoff mode. I always think that team's going to go on a run. I am a Flyers skeptic. I look at this team, I see a bad power play, I see a bad penalty kill. They've been the sixth best team in the league since the Olympic break. They've only got 8 regulation wins in that time. Convince me that the Flyers, they're playing the Penguins in the first round most likely. That's a winnable series. Penguins aren't scaring anybody. Convince me that they would be able to handle the Carolina Hurricanes in the second round. That they're at that kind of a level based on how they're playing right now.
Yeah, well, I don't think they are, if I'm being honest. I mean, I think they can give Pittsburgh a series, because if you're looking at Pittsburgh, which is the team, assuming they get in here, they're going to play. That's a winnable series, because I think the Flyers are deeper now than the Penguins, and I think they have the better goaltender. Now, the Crosby factor, I wouldn't even necessarily pick the Flyers in the first round because of the Crosby factor. He just kills the Flyers. And because, as you mentioned, Mark, the Penguins have a top 10 power play and penalty kill. The Flyers are near the bottom. They have the worst power play, and I think they're 22nd or 23rd in penalty kill. So, I'm skeptical that they could go on any sort of deep run. I think they could beat Pittsburgh, but what you're looking from this team, what they've been looking for, management has been looking for from this team all along, is just improvement. It's a very young team. If you take their top 9, I averaged out their ages, the top 9 forwards, the average age is something like 24.9. They got all these young guys in here. Maybe they're too young and stupid to even realize that they're going to be pressure situations, right? And
it works.
They surprised everybody, but they were looking for this group to obviously the additions Danny made in the offseason. He wanted the team to get better. He wants this young core, especially those young wingers, to grow with some of the veterans that he kept around that he labeled as, team leaders, so to speak, on and off the ice, like Travis Konechny, Travis Sanheim, Sean Couturier. And they've done that. So that's, the encouraging thing, I think, if you're a Flyers fan going into the playoffs, is that the team has gotten progressively better, even from the course of 3 weeks ago to now. I know they lost that game in Detroit, but they beat the New Jersey Devils easily in a game they needed before that. They go to Winnipeg, they take care of business 7-1. They beat them. So, they were getting those, the shootout points earlier and the loser points earlier. They're winning games more outright now. At least lately, and a little bit more convincingly. Now, they still have to do it one more time here over the final 2, but even some of the games they've lost recently, there was a game in Washington that they lost. And then, Max, you probably remember the game against the Red Wings in Philadelphia. The Flyers outchanced the Red Wings like 2-1 in that game, and they still ended up losing. So even the games that they've dropped lately, they've been in just about every game over the last little while.
Well, they played the Red Wings 3 times in the last 2 weeks, and so I've seen them a ton. And the first of those 3 matches, which in fairness was the only one the Flyers won, it was a defensive clinic. They were locked down, kept everything to the outside. My skepticism with them kind of has stemmed from, do they have enough offense? Like that'll keep the games low scoring in the playoffs. But there's been an answer to that with Porter Martone, and you inject this skilled top 10 pick into your lineup, and he puts up a point per game in his first 2 weeks in the league. there's your skill. There's your offense that you've been needing. It's a lot to put on a young kid, but it helps.
I mean, the impact he's had was instantaneous. I mean, even his very first game in Washington, D.C., I think 3.5 minutes, he takes a delay a game penalty. You're like, oh, geez, that's a heck of a way to start your career. And actually, I saw James Higgins, I think, did the same thing, took a hook in the Bruins Columbus game. But even throughout the course of that game against the Capitals, Martone got better as the game went on. And then by the third period, and it was a 5-4 game and a close game, he's getting in the front of the net. He's creating chances. He's causing all sorts of havoc. And then the next game, which I think was that Detroit game you talked about, Max, he had like 9 shots on goal. Scores the overtime winner against Boston. That was only a week ago now, I guess, in a must-win game. Scored another power play goal, and then he finally got his first even strength goal in Winnipeg. I mean, it's every night this kid is making plays. And, even a game like the Winnipeg game, he didn't really have a great game altogether, but he still found a way to make a play. He strips Adam Lowry to the defensive end. He goes the other way. He gets a great pass from Travis Konechny, and he finishes it. And, much like I just said with Foerster, the two things that this team has lacked are a shoot first mentality and size. And he's got both of those things. And that's why, Rick Tocchet has likened Martone to Foerster in that regard as guys that, they can win a puck battle on the wall. They can take the puck to a dangerous area. They can either shoot it or look to pass it. And, what Martone has done so far has been remarkable. I mean, it has not been a fluke. His 7 points in 7 games is a legitimate 7 points.
This is one of my favorite times of year when those kids, those 18, 19-year-olds come into the league at the very end. Like we're seeing it in Chicago with Anton Frondel, who was the 3rd overall pick last year. He's been a point-a-game guy. He's centering his own line on the second line. They already took him away from Bedard. It's fun to see that. But Martone, these are big games. Like Frondel is doing this in like a vacuum where nothing matters. He's just getting his feet wet. The fact that Martone is playing like this in these games that just have the weight of the world on him, it's been really impressive to watch him play.
And I think it actually kind of speaks to the way Danny Briere has gone about this rebuild positively, right? Because you want to bring a kid into this sort of situation, but you don't want the weight of the world to be on his shoulders. And the way that this team is set up, I mean, they've got other guys. Trevor Zegras, Noah Cates has been playing well. Konechny has had a little bit of a skid lately, but he's still their leading scorer. You got Foerster back in the lineup. Christian Dvorak has been, great in the middle, especially lately. He's really been a nice addition. So, the whether the Flyers win tomorrow is not, or win either of their final 2 games, it's not necessary. Porter Martone doesn't have to be going to bed tonight thinking, boy, I got to go out there and I better score tonight, or the whole city's going to hate me because we're going to miss the playoffs. I mean, there's other guys and other veteran guys that can get the job done, just as well as he can. He shouldn't be thinking that it's all, a playoff spot rides on his shoulders.
Well, Owen Tippett's been phenomenal.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Tippett. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's another one who can kind of be instant offense for you.
Yeah, and he's hit a little bit of a snag these last couple of games, but I mean, he was driving the bus before the Flyers got Foerster and Martone even in the lineup. The whole reason they were able to stay around, I mean, a big part of the reason was Owen Tippett. And his name was floated out in some bogus trade rumors before the trade deadline. And the very first game coming out of the trade deadline was really the first game you're watching him. You're like, geez, where's this guy been all year? And I remember talking to him just one-on-one after that game. And I asked him flat out, and I said, the trade deadline's over. Your name was out there. Is it a relief at all? And I forget specifically what he said, but he basically said, yeah. He's like, I don't like hearing that. It's you don't want to, it's part of the business, but you don't like hearing your name in trade rumors. And I actually go back to last year, and I remember talking to him in Toronto after Flyers traded Morgan Frost, Joel Farabee, and Scott Lawton, who were like maybe his 3 best friends in the dressing room. And he was really impacted by that. I mean, maybe he's a sensitive guy. He's a human being, right? When you lose your best friends and you come to work every day and you don't see him anymore, things are different. I think that really affected him. So I do believe there's something there, that the weight of the trade deadline was a weight off of his shoulders. And I mean, the way he's not just on the ice, but the way he's carrying himself off the ice, the way he's talking even to us, like you can tell this is a confident guy that is 27 years old. So he's not young anymore. He's locked up here for, I think, 7 more years after this one, 6 or 7 more years after this one. And he wants to be a part of this. He wants to be one of the guys leading the way. And, more nights than not, he has been lately.
You mentioned Trevor Zegras. I know the focus is on the now right now in Philly, but what kind of deal is he going to get? He's an RFA. He's having a career best season. He's got like 25 goals. Like he's almost at 70 points. He's played every game, which is a big deal with him. Mm-hmm. What kind of contract do you think he's looking at? Because they got some big contracts to give out in the near future.
It's such an interesting decision because, or even just a conversation because, he's played center since the trade deadline. Now he's done some nice things at center, but like, is Trevor Zegras a number one center on a contending team? Like, I'm skeptical of that. Even the game against the Jets, he didn't do a whole lot. He's matched up against Mark Scheifele, which is a tough assignment for everyone. But, I don't think Zegras is a guy that can handle that. And frankly, that's why if the Flyers are to play the Penguins in the first round, if you're the Penguins, I think you'd be happy matching up Sidney Crosby on Zegras in the middle all day long. So, he was having his early success on the wing as a left wing with Dvorak as a center. Now he's been playing center lately. This team's strength is on the wing. Obviously, they still are looking for that top line center, and that's going to be. I don't know how they're going to go out and get that. That's number one on Danny Briere's list. But I don't think there's any question they want to keep Zegras around. If I had to guess, if I just pull a number out of the air, I'd say 5 years, $45 million. $9 million a year. I think that's the going rate for a guy that's about a point per game guy. Maybe not quite that much. But I think, Rick Tocchet really likes him. You can tell that there's a really strong relationship there between the two of them. It's going to be interesting not just because of Zegras himself, but because this team has so many young wingers now that, do you that's the first question I guess the Flyers have to answer. Is Zegras a center or is he a winger? And then maybe you go from there.
Well, you could mix and match a little bit. I mean, if you have Zegras, Michkov, Martone, Tippett, those are a great winger core to build around. And if you need Zegras to flex in and someone gets hurt, you can do it. I mean, there are other wingers I think can play third line checking. Martone
there are,
certainly.
But in terms of money, I mean, centers make more than wingers, right?
Yeah,
so,
no doubt.
I'm sure his agent is probably now looking at him, say, "Hey, this guy's played center for the last 4 weeks, so he deserves top line center money." I don't think that's something the Flyers would want to do.
Future problems for the Philadelphia Flyers, though. They got present business to attend to. That's where the focus is. Kevin Kurz will be all over it for The Athletic. Kevin, thank you for joining us.
Yep, anytime, guys. Thanks.
We'll take a quick break right there. We'll come back. We'll wrap this up. All right, we are back. We've heard, Laz, from the
Thanks, guys.
Capitals side of things. We've heard from the Flyers side of things. So here's what I want to do. On the Wednesday show, when Frankie leaves the pod, Sean and Sean always do What Have We Learned? I want to kind of forward look that a little bit. We're going to do What Will We Learn this week? And it's just going to be the outcome of the three remaining playoff races here. So we got the guys we just talked to, Philly or Washington, or I'll still allow Columbus here. There's still a chance that the Columbus Blue Jackets can get in for the last spot in the Metro. We can do Anaheim or LA for the last spot in the Pacific, and Anaheim, LA, or Nashville for the last West wildcard spot. Unless you want to get really bold and say San Jose or Winnipeg, I wouldn't advise it. But this is what will we learn. So let's start in the Metro.
I think we're going to learn. Oh, you want to go to the Metro first? All right. I still think it's the Flyers. I think they have the inside track here. I just feel like everyone else is playing like mediocre to okay, and they're playing well. They've got the juice right now. And we've seen it time and time again in these kind of situations where it's the team that gets hot at the right time wins this thing. And I think Philly's going to, I don't think Philly's necessarily good, for lack of a better term, but I think that they're going to pull this thing out.
It's just they do have those tough games. I mean, we talked about it with Sean. Like Carolina, I think comes out to clinch it. I think Carolina comes out to clinch it, and then Montreal, it's like they should get that one done. But you never know.
I mean, Carolina just played a game in where they sat like 11 guys.
That is true.
So I mean, I don't know how serious they are worried about that at this point.
About the one seed.
Yeah, I feel like that's not a huge priority at this point. So
well, frankly, some of it might be you'd probably almost rather play Boston at this point than Ottawa too.
Ottawa also red hot right now, right? I mean, Ottawa's came out of nowhere. We thought Boston was like ensconced in that first wild card. Now they're flirting with the second wild card because of what Ottawa's doing. Absolutely. So there's no good it's a myth that you want to play this team in the first round. I feel like that never works out. Like, who would have wanted to play the Florida Panthers in the first round 3 years ago, everybody would have wanted to play them. They were the 8 seed. They barely got in. They were bad most of the year, but they got hot at the end, and they went all the way to the Stanley Cup final. You don't want to play the team that becomes the 2012 LA Kings. You don't want to be play that hot 8 seed. I'd rather face a 6 or a 7 seed than an 8 seed a lot of times, because that 8 seed's been in playoff mode for weeks already at that point.
The thing is, the Capitals have also won 7 out of 9 here. Like, I know the 2 losses in there are bad losses. They have
Really
won 7
bad.
out of 9. They've been hot too, but I do. You're right. The Flyers have the inside track, and all they got to do really is get 1 win out of those 2 games. All right, that sounds good to me. Well, I'll ride that one with you. We'll go the Flyers. Let's go to the Pacific, or the last Pacific spot, Anaheim or LA. As we record this, it is Sunday night, so I'm asking you to do this on less information than our listeners will have. As we record this, the Ducks trail 2-1 against Vancouver. If they lose that game, it might even change your opinion of the Anaheim Ducks here. What do you think?
I want to say the Kings win out, leapfrog Anaheim, and we get Oilers Kings for the 17th straight year. I am openly, actively rooting for it. I was just in Edmonton with the Blackhawks last week, and I was talking to all the Edmonton writers. I'm like, how much are you hoping to avoid LA? And they're like, oh God, not LA again. I think it'll be absolutely hilarious to get Oilers Kings again. And I got to think, if you're the Kings, don't you kind of want that? Don't you need to slay that demon? Don't you need to kind of get out there and you have to beat them? You have to beat the Oilers. I want to see it. I want to see it again.
I think that the Ducks find a way to hold on, but I say that knowing that it could look very stupid by the time anyone hears this.
You know, it's amazing. The Kings have, as we say this, have 21 regulation wins. And they're, I'm going to go on a tangent here. The Montreal Canadiens are flirting with the number 1 seed overall in the East. They've got 33 regulation wins. That's not a lot. The Minnesota Wild, I'm doing Stars Wild next week, so I was doing a deep dive on that. The Minnesota Wild right now, if they lose their last 2 games, will be the only team in NHL history to be a 100-point team with just 30 regulation wins. Overtime is so prevalent now in these shootouts that we don't know who's good and who's not. I swear, we really don't know who's good in a Stanley Cup playoffs where there is no 3-on-3 overtime and there are no shootouts. Cole Caulfield is awesome, but he's God in 3-on-3 overtime. Yes. Will he be God in 5-on-5 Stanley Cup overtime? I don't know. He might be. But there is so little that we know because so many of these teams have padded their records in overtime, which is, hey, that's the regular season. That's the way it's drawn up. But it's just, I would love to see 3-point regulation wins to avoid this scenario, because I don't know if the Kings are actually good or if they're atrocious. They have like the same amount of regulation wins as the Blackhawks.
Well, you could say the same thing about the Ducks, right? I mean, the Ducks have 25 regulation wins right now. I mean, it's more than the Kings, to your point, but that's not many, especially some of the teams that we've been talking about here as we've talked about playoff tie breaks and
like
stuff.
We know the Colorado Avalanche are good. Do we know the Montreal Canadiens are elite? Are they cup contenders? They have 33 wins. They have lost so many more games than they've won in regulation.
I don't know. The issue that would scare me for the Ducks is Dostal. Like, he's had some stinkers lately, and he should be one of their biggest like aces in the hole here, but he's not in form right now, and that would make me a little scared. But I will go with the Ducks there. Are you at least taking the Ducks for the wild card? You're taking the Kings for the Pacific.
Yeah, I think Anaheim holds on. Nashville has the tiebreak on the Kings, I believe.
Well, they have the tiebreak on both of them. They have 20.
They have the tiebreak on both?
Wins. Yep.
You can't count them out. They've got San Jose and Anaheim at home. Those are winnable games. There's going to be a lot of juice behind those games because they matter to everybody involved. San Jose is still on the periphery here. A lot can happen in the West still, man. There's a lot more action in the West all of a sudden than there is in the East. Yeah,
the pillow fight turned interesting. So I guess there's that.
It could be, it's competitive. Doesn't mean it's great. It's still competitive, though.
Yeah, you still want to know who's going to win it. All right. Great week of hockey on tap. That's going to do it for us today. The Seans will be back with you alongside Frankie on Wednesday. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell to stay informed and catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And in the meantime, you can join our Discord community. We'll see you there.